Descent of the Demon God. By Hanjo Wiolia. Chapter 164. MS Group. Part 1. The moment Chen Youwen saw Marquis Albert, he felt a considerable power resonating within him. If they had a fight, it would only be a matter of seconds for this place to be devastated, so he chose the neat way. Of course, after seeing him kill the Marquis, D and the other man were at a loss of words. Is he even a human? He killed a monster among monsters with a single blow. They knew about demons and the strength they possessed. It would not be an exaggeration to say demons were comparable to or even stronger than those called the strongest among humans, even at the count level. Chen Youwen passed by the ashes that were scattered and walked towards them. What stupid agreement did you make with the demons? Chen Youwen had certainly killed all the traitors of the demon clan, but the demons kept appearing. Nonetheless, he had somewhat of an idea for their appearances. The one he just killed either came to pursue traitors like Shekinah or just had other plans. Is there a high possibility that it is the former? From what Chen Youwen knew, Shekinah was ranked third among the counts. The chances were high enough. Why you think we'll just answer you? While the researcher next to D was scared, he looked at the combat agents who were surprised behind Chen Youwen. In response, the combat agents pulled out their guns and shouted at Chen Youwen. It might or might not work, but it was their duty to protect the executives. D, don't move. I'll shoot. So annoying. That was all Chen Youwen said. Thud. At that moment, cracks appeared on the floor, and dents formed in several places as dozens of agents suddenly disappeared from view. No, how? The two people's faces turned pale. They could guess just by looking at the pieces of blood and flesh splattered where the soldiers had just been that they were all crushed to death. What they were most shocked about wasn't the lack of screaming during this process, but rather Chen Youwen, who didn't even blink at using such a crude method. This won't change anything, D said, preparing for his death. Chen Youwen responded as if he didn't care. It doesn't matter if you answer me or not. I just need an ear that can listen to me. An eerie blue light shone from Chen Youwen as he approached them. Memories began to play like a film. Inside the laboratory with the words Sector 73 engraved on the wall. There, several researchers wearing full-body sanitary robes were experimenting with exotic-looking naked bodies. Don't worry about the material flowing through. It will naturally disappear. Yes, senior researcher. The leaders of this were D and H, who were among the 10. They connected various mechanical devices and cut something from the naked man as they observed the reaction. Bang! The ceiling collapsed and someone suddenly appeared, a person wearing a white hooded cloak with a splendid pattern on it, and those wearing blue European aristocratic clothes on either side of him were his assistants. One of them had a familiar face. That's him. It was a man named Marquis Albert, who had just died in Chen Youwen's hands. Due to their sudden appearance, the agents guarding the laboratory immediately stepped forward and surrounded them. Then the man in the middle, wearing a hooded cloak over his head, opened his mouth. You little worms. As soon as he said that, Marquis Albert raised his hand and the people who surrounded them disappeared as ashes, leaving no one behind. What are you guys? Among those wearing sanitary robes, a tall man about 190 centimeters came out, throwing his sanitary mask away. He stretched out his hand and pulled out a sword out of the scabbard that stood on one side of the lab. A blue haze rose from it and flew towards the intruders. Supreme Master? Surprisingly, the tall man was a Murim warrior who reached Supreme Master level. The Supreme Master warrior, of which only 5 were officially in the current Murim, was held by MS Group as an escort to protect the 10. Such a great talent came out, but the result was PSSS. Marquis Albert, who easily blocked the sword, turned the tall man into ashes at once. The alarm sounded and numerous agents appeared, but the result was the same: everyone was murdered without a chance to do anything. Suddenly, the view of the memories started to change again. Did they come in contact with the demons like that? The next question Chen Yuan asked was what kind of agreements were made with the demons. The place had changed. A man in a hooded cloak sat arrogantly in the hall, and those in research suits knelt and spoke to him. As ordered, we will surely bring the traitor. The one who said this was someone whom Chen Yuan didn't get to meet. He was a middle-aged man with short hair and big eyes, giving the impression of a frog, and he seemed to be one of the 10. But at his words, Marquis Albert spoke in an uncomfortable tone. Lord. Even so, to entrust these insignificant insects with the divine items that His Majesty has ordered us to use. Before he could finish his words, the man in the hooded cloak pulled something out of his pocket. It was the golden wheel that the MS group talked about as if they had found it, but in reality a demon had actually given it to them. The man in the hood said, "If you can't find the traitor after borrowing this, I will erase all of you from this world. Is there anything to do? Take it." Hearing those words, the frog-like middle-aged man walked forwards with his head bowed and carefully accepted the wheel. The hooded man asked the middle-aged man, who took the wheel and stepped back, "What do you want?" As if waiting for the answer, the middle-aged man answered, "If you are all-powerful, then you must know what's in the sky." At those words, the man in the hood smiled. He seemed to understand what the frog-like middle-aged man was saying. In the sky? On the other hand, Chen Yuan couldn't understand at all. The middle-aged man continued, "Please remove the worst thing that took the sky from us." At the words, someone other than Marquis Albert, a man with tan skin and blue aristocratic clothes, said with a noble voice, looking outside the window, "That is the earnest plea of the bugs that cannot fly even though they have wings, my lord." Even though these were memories, the demons were all arrogant. They acted as if they were ruling over the humans. The man in the hood opened his mouth. "Is that all?" When the permission was granted, the middle-aged man smiled. At that time, Dee's thoughts were heard. Will we be able to get the right to offer in our hands? At the end of the thought, the memory was cut off. As the place changed again, this time it was a space made of black. There was a large round table in the black space, and there were 10 people wearing masks with alphabet letters on them. Are these guys the 10 executives? The next question Chen Yuan asked was about their purpose. It was obvious that the reason they were reaching out to so various places behind the scenes was because they had an objective. At the round table, a voice came out from a masked person named A. "Welcome to being a member of the 10, J." It was a mechanical tone from a hard, cold voice with no emotions. The person A was looking at was D. So he wasn't D from the beginning. Zhou Houji said that a total of 10 executives leading the MS group were referred to as the 10. There were many other researchers besides them, but these people were the ones he remembered as being the center of the MS group. However, they didn't seem to have an equal relationship. Your research paper on DNA extraction and fossil restoration published in science journals is highly appreciated by myself and the others. At that, J, who was D in the present, got up and bowed to express his gratitude. "That is an exaggeration, Commander." In response, B, who was next to A, said, "At the round table, call only by code name." "Ah. I understand." D, who was called J, cautiously answered, "He's the one." Thanks to this, Chen Yuan knew for sure that A was the leader as A spoke again. J's research achievements will play an important role in achieving our tasks in the future. For this group's long-awaited goal, all 10 members should support him. Yes. Everyone answered simultaneously. Chen Yuan still couldn't understand what the purpose of this could be. However, the words A said next made Chen Yuan's mind blank for a moment. Never stop until the moment we actualize and bring forth the true God, the source of mankind. Yes. They all responded vigorously, as if they were a cult. God? What was the meaning of A's words just before? What Chen Yuan knew as God was the sacred fire and the demon god that the cultists worshipped in the Sky Demon Order. Of course, other than that, there were the Jade Emperor and the Three Pure Ones in Taoism, Tathagata in Buddhism. God was a transcendent being. However, with their own mouths, the executives declared that their purpose was to embody, create such a being. What are they up to? Chen Yuan felt entirely baffled. It would be more realistic if they wanted China in their hands, or to become the masterminds behind the world's affairs. They are all crazy. These people were more absurd than any enemy he had met before. According to the knowledge from nano, science and technology were said to be created for the development of mankind, but these people were now looking beyond the realm of God and beyond God itself. Shoo! Suddenly, the memory changed again. A number of different places came to mind. These were the locations of the labs that they called sectors. Are these all? The places of about 30 bases were imprinted in his mind. However, among the 10, there were only 3 sectors that D knew. Fat. Chen Yuan opened his eyes. This was all the information he got from D's ghost. A's base, the most important one, was unknown. Eik. Chen Yuan looked at the man in the research suit, who was trembling. What's your codename? Normally, the man would have chosen death, but after seeing Chen Yuan turn D into a ghost, he was terrified. Terrified, he wasn't able to answer. Realize God? Crazy bastard. The man's eyes widened at Chen Yuan's words. Only the 10 executives knew of MS Group's ultimate goal. Numerous people had been replaced, but even then their purpose wasn't revealed because leaving the group entirely meant death. H, how does he know? Could it be from when he put his hand on D's head after turning him into a ghost? The man was a genius. Just by seeing Chen Yuan's actions, he was able to realize what happened, and the fact that he guessed it put an even greater pressure on him. And if I'm killed, will he be able to search through my memories? If so, was there even any meaning to being loyal and keeping his mouth shut? Shoo! The corner of Chen Yuan's lips rose. This man had realized exactly what Chen Yuan was intending for, and it certainly helped him. Puk. Woong. Chen Yuan had his hand on the chest of D's ghost, which made a groaning sound. In that state, Chen Yuan raised his energy. Pang. The ghost vanished without a trace. The man's eyes widened in shock at what he saw. After seeing the ghost being dispelled, he knew that Chen Yuan could even kill the ghosts. From now on, I won't be asking twice. Next time, that will be you. As soon as he said that, the man shouted. My codename is H. Finally the mouth opened. Do you know the base of the other 10, A in particular? At Chen Yuan's question, H trembled and said. I don't know the others, only D's lab, Sector 4, my lab, Sector 8, and F's lab, Sector 6. At those words, Chen Yuan was happy to realize one thing. In his memory, G's sector was revealed. In that case, Chen Yuan knew the information of 7 people, D, E, F, G, H, I, Chai Muntak, and J. So the others don't have codenames? As some of the mid-level researchers who are skilled are given codenames. In other words, it meant that the one called K was a candidate for 10. How about B and C? Even among the 10, there is almost no interaction to keep the secrets among them, and they can meet through the virtual roundtable. That was true. According to the memory of the deceased, only if their research overlapped did they visit the other sectors. He doesn't know any important information. Chen Yuan clicked his tongue. The most effective way would be to get rid of the head, but his identity was unknown. That would be nice. Chen Yuan thought of a simple strategy. He didn't know if it would work, but he wanted to give it a try. What are you doing here? According to Dee's memory, the 10 had an important role in MS Group, and if so, their achievements would surely reflect in their sectors. That. I told you I won't ask twice. Hearing that, H guided him. H, who was hurt and bleeding, led him outside the room and touched a place with no buttons with his thumb, making a beeping noise. Going down to the basement lab. Wing. They went down the elevator for about 30 seconds. Energy is around. Chen Yuan sensed about 30 people right outside, but they weren't very skilled Murin warriors or anything. As the elevator opened, a bright LED caught his eyes and a space with numerous mechanical devices was revealed. Wide. At first glance, it was large enough to fill thousands of people. Hiding this underground was a huge task. When H took the lead, 2 guards at the front let them pass, without any checks. Maybe all of them are researchers. This place was a lab filled with people in white coats, wandering as they spoke or did their work. However, Chen Yuan looked elsewhere. The lab was around 3 stories high and had numerous capsule-shaped objects with living people suspended in blue liquids. He could understand that they were experimenting on humans, but what are you people doing here? In the numerous capsules were people with the same, unmistakable face. It was impossible to have so many twins, and the face they shared was of Seogi. They were all Seogi, whom Chen Yuan turned into a ghost. Chapter 165. MS Group. Part 2. There were dozens of humans in large capsule-like machines, and they all had the faces of Seogi. Not only did their faces look identical, but also their naked bodies seemed almost identical except for a few subtle differences. Chen Yuan was just speechless, and undoubtedly shocked at the same thing captured in the many capsules. What the hell? This appears to be clone technology. At that moment, Nano's voice answered. Clone technology? Clone technology is a technology that produces human bodies of the same individual through gene analysis and DNA replication. PRRR. His head trembled as the information was transferred to his brain. Clone technology was simply cloning, but it was strictly prohibited ethically and legally, even in Nano's time, despite the sufficient technological prowess. To clone a human. It was something Chen Yuan, who lived according to his own will, couldn't understand. He believed that human beings were born with a purpose. The heavenly killing star, Seogi, had the physical potential of a killing machine that even the heavenly body couldn't measure up to, and the fact that so many people were mass-produced raised a few doubts in Chen Yuan. You. Yes. H, who was watching from behind, responded quickly. The sector's secret wasn't disclosed to anyone thus far, so he could understand Chen Yuan's reaction as it was a study that everyone could criticize. You guys, did you plan on making an army made of heavenly killing stars? H didn't answer, making Chen Yuan release his vicious energy. Yes, that was our goal. Flustered, H immediately answered out of the fear of losing his life. They had produced any human life they wished for their own purpose, but there was no way that they thought this was morally sound. Quite absurd. Just one heavenly killing star was dangerous, and it was no exaggeration to say that the idea of mass production of such a human would cause the end of the world. You guys thought you could create heaven, huh? As he walked forward, Chen Yuan exclaimed as he looked at the capsule in the back, assuming that all the capsules were of Seogi. However, he was wrong. In the back row, there were dozens of clones with the same face as Mun Il Hyang, the head of Ocean Group, but they looked like they were in their mid-20s. Were you people? Chen Yuan looked at the rest of the rows as well. As he approached the back rows, all of the clones seemed to be in their 20s, looking youthful. There was even Kwa Kwun, who died at the hands of Chen Yuan as one of the 5 great warriors. Crazy bastards. It was obvious that he didn't have to look back. He cloned most of the warriors of current Murim. It seemed like they were doing this because they had different bodies, and the things they were doing were disgusting even for those working there. You. Yes. You guys are clearly misunderstanding something. Yes? If you make a large number of cloned warriors in this way, do you think they'll have the same physical capabilities as the original ones? Chen Yuan considered the cloning efforts foolish. Even if their bodies were replicated, the 5 great warriors reached their higher state after decades of training and realization, and it would be impossible to create such warriors from clones. You seem to be looking down on Murim warriors. There was no point in creating hundreds of them. Artificially created warriors wouldn't have the training or passion, so from where would they get their strength? Click. It was then that a voice came from the speaker in the lab. You came all the way here. It was a voice Chen Yuan had heard before. No, to be more accurate, it was a voice he vividly remembered from reading someone's memories. H's face turned pale. See, Commander. The voice from the speaker was the head of MS Group. H was perplexed when he heard A's voice. Where is he? Chen Yuan opened up his senses to find out where the man was, but realizing Chen Yuan's intentions, A said, You can't find me. As soon as the words were said, something unexpected happened. Pang! Pang! Suddenly, an explosion sounded within the researchers walking around the lab. As they looked, there were explosions inside their bodies, glowing red signs of head, and cracks on their skin. Shoo! Then, all of the researchers fell down like ashes fluttering. It happened to not just one person, but all of the researchers at the same time. They didn't even have the time to realize that they were dying before their bodies fell over. Chen Yuan had seen this before. Nanobomb. When a nanobomb exploded inside the body, this was the kind of death that ensued. The presences of the people were completely wiped, and the lab felt empty. All of them were killed. H was stunned at the sight of the researchers turning into ash. All of them were outstanding people in the field, and it was heartbreaking to see such people killed without hesitation. Yuck. Then something unexpected happened. A strong dizziness and feeling of abnormality crept throughout his body. And no. My body too? Since he was a member of MS Group, once he was pushed into the executive position, he had went out of his way to rid of all the bombs in the body. I removed them though? However, reality was harsh. The absence of explosives doesn't mean that all the nanomachines in the body were eliminated. How do you know? He could think of a couple things, but he could not think much with the pain he was going through as his internal organs were hurting and bleeding. Pay the price for bringing in the enemy inside. Commander. H, who felt a sense of betrayal, shouted with a face full of despair as something rang in his ear. Snap. With the sound of a finger snapping, the pain in his body disappeared. H made a face displaying his inability to understand what happened when Chen Yuan snapped his finger. Interesting. Interfering with frequencies by snapping your finger. F frequency? H, who luckily saved his life, looked at Chen Yuan in awe. Chen Yuan was a little skeptical, but was fortunate to have succeeded. There was the chance the frequency that activates the nanobomb is the same. The main frequency wavelengths controlling the nanobombs in the MS group and those of Chen Yuan were the same, causing interference with the frequency coming out. Even then, you won't be able to get anything from there. Crackle. Papong. With A's voice, the computers in the lab sparked up as their internal circuits were all burned. Measures were always taken to dispose of unimportant places in case something happened. You must be afraid of being found. Chen Yuan provoked A as he was trying to destroy everything. A, with the altered voice, answered. This is a reasonable measure. Do you think cutting off your tail will keep you hidden? You will not find us. Quite overconfident. You will die there. With those words, the capsules holding the clones all opened at once. Pop-pop-pack. A gooey blue liquid spilled out from the opened capsules as numerous clones slumped. Tubes inserted in their heads, necks, and spines kept them suspended within the capsules. Whoa! A loud, mechanical whirring sound came from all around. H quickly said to Chen Yuan in an urgent voice. We need to get out of here right now. H knew what was happening, and the perfected clones that were attached to the ceiling only made the situation worse. Goo! Chen Yuan looked down, feeling the energy right below the site. The core. The energy from the core was coming from below, but it wasn't just the energy from the core that he was feeling. It was the energy of the core being injected into the clones. PRRR. As energy was injected to the tubes, the clones began to fall. No. H, unlike Chen Yuan, wasn't a Murim warrior, so he couldn't feel anything that was happening, but since he had developed the control of the place's core, he knew what would happen. He plans to stop the monster and blow this up. H was in panic. The commander is trying to wake them all up and kill us. Even if we were to beat them, if the core control unit below this explodes, a radius of 2 to 3 kilometers will be destroyed. Even a monster wouldn't be able to stop the release of the explosive energy. A's voice came out through the speaker. Even if you recognize it, it's already too late. Soon this will be your grave. Whoa! At that moment, Chen Yuan's figure disappeared as if seeping into the air. A's voice, which was speaking through the speaker, stopped. H couldn't help but feel flustered. He had seen people get sucked into space countless times through E's ability. For a moment, he thought it was ridiculous, but he ended up saying his thoughts. Fuck. Did you just use spatial movement alone and leave me here? Chapter 166. MS Group. Part 3. Damn it. Since their relationship had been hostile from the beginning, Chen Yuan had no obligation to rescue him. However, H was dismayed at the thought that the person had left him. Meanwhile, a total of 420 surveillance cameras that were installed in the lab were moving, trying to figure out the location of Chen Yuan. H said that it was a spatial movement, but I didn't seem to believe it. There were cameras everywhere in the lab. Unlike general sectors, these cameras had various functions. Wing. The camera searched every nook and cranny, but Chen Yuan was nowhere to be seen. However, there was one place without cameras. That was where the core control unit linked to the main system. So it wasn't a place where Chen Yuan could enter either. It was then. Crackle. The sound of sparks bursting. With that, the sound of the motor running, which had made the entire laboratory deafening, gradually diminished. And no. H looked down. The floor where the sound of sparks was heard turned still, and not long after. Bang! Someone came up with a roar from the floor. That person was Chen Yuan. Ugh! H's face, who thought Chen Yuan had escaped earlier, contorted. He was aware of E's ability, which could be used when he had been to the place before, but what Chen Yuan did was different. How did he get down there? Of course, it was because of the teleportation ability that Chen Yuan had absorbed from the demon. The teleportation ability was a short-distance movement. Although it was only 15 meters, he was able to move around the place. It was the first time that I sounded flustered. The energy of the core, which had been activated as if it would explode any moment, was gone. Chen Yuan spoke. I am thankful. Not that it is necessary, but thanks to you, I got a lot of stuff. Of course, it was Chen Yuan who took the cores in the control unit. He went down and took away all 3 S-class cores, 13 A-class cores, and 27 B-class cores. I picked up a lot. There was no reason to not loot it, so it was put in the shadows. Flick. The LED lights in the lab began to flicker. All of the energy inside itself was returned to the core control unit and converted to reserve power. Done. H let out a relieved sigh. Chen Yuan's fast thinking allowed him to avert both the activation of clones and the explosion of the lab at the same time. Shall we find out where you are? Shoo. Chen Yuan's figure disappeared in front of the cameras and then reappeared. The gadolinium line came out and linked to the camera as he grabbed it with his hand. Nano, track it. Yes. There was a location where they could control the cameras and lab. However, the instant Nano attempted to hack. Pang! The camera exploded. As Chen Yuan judged that he did it, he immediately moved to another camera 5 meters away. At that moment, that camera exploded too. Look at this one. He was blocking any way in advance to be tracked down. Then A said, "My prediction turned out to be true. I'm not sure how you achieved it, but by simply touching a machine, you have a degree of hacking expertise that exceeds that of any professional hacker. That's how you were able to find us." At those words, Chen Yuan narrowed his eyes. He's cool-headed. Chen Yuan's enemies would either panic or rush ahead to strike, and they frequently exhibited gaps. This one, on the other hand, was cold-blooded. He was instead analyzing Chen Yuan. I should kill him. Chen Yuan decided that it could be a nuisance to him. The criterion for judging him in this way was because of the safety of Sky Demon Order rather than for himself. A declared war to Chen Yuan. As expected, you are an existence who has to be killed. Funny. I was thinking the same thing. I really want this place to be your grave. Pa. At the end, all the cameras in the lab had exploded along with the speakers. And the remote devices were broken. As a result, Chen Yuan couldn't pursue him any longer. Tack. Chit. His eyes were irritated, as if he had lost sight of the main head that was directly in front of him. However, it was evident that this tragedy had given MS Group serious damage. It was stated that the 10 sectors overseen by the 10 people in MS were crucial. Thud. The sound of something falling. At that, Chen Yuan turned his head to the place. A naked man with blue liquid on him. It was a clone of Seogi. Wasn't he dead? The energy was cut off, but then this man had his eyes open and the evil energy could be seen from the eyes. It didn't stop there. Pack. The tubes moved as the clones, whose tubes were fixed, opened their eyes and struggled. Damn it. They seemed to have energy within. H couldn't hide his shock at that appearance. They thought that since the energy stopped flowing, then the clones couldn't be activated any longer. But then all the clones were looking at Chen Yuan and H. Chen, Mr. Chen. What do we do? H looked bewildered and scared at what happened. He knew that Chen Yuan was the only one who could fight. Tack. The clones moved. However, contrary to Chen Yuan's expectations that they were born in capsules and couldn't have combat powers. Whoa! Blue-colored energy fluttered from the hands. Just by looking at it, he knew that they had to be Supermaster level. Energy? What did you people do? Now isn't the time to ask all these. When Chen Yuan looked back with a cold gaze, H answered. We developed a chip which contains information about the battles and martial arts of people of Murim. They developed a learning system to assist the clones in adapting. A method of transmitting data via inserting chips into the brain. A lot of materials and techniques on martial arts were embedded and refined so that it could be applied naturally. The development hasn't progressed enough to be commercialized yet. Even if the chip takes over the learning function, we can't keep it up physically. So you mean that the body was created with the DNA of strong warriors? H nodded at Chen Yuan, who understood it at once. It was possible to create and experiment with the body of an ordinary person, but they didn't want to end it with that, and the clones were created. TCH. Chen Yuan was a bit impressed with it. The end of their technology would be making someone like Chen Yuan to transmit all the information to the brain and analyze martial arts. Besides, the nano-machine in Chen Yuan helps the body match the martial arts. But since these people didn't have those chips in their possession, they utilized clones. Fat. At that time, the clones which fell, moved at the same time. Rather than an organized movement, they all aimed for Chen Yuan and H. Eik. Chen Yuan immediately looked at the techniques the clones were unfolding. The technique wasn't simple. In particular, the clones of Seogi were unfolding the swordsmanship which he actually did in the past. They aren't techniques which need any kind of enlightenment. But, does it mean that they can use the techniques and its power to the maximum too? Papa Pack. Weak. Mr. Chen. H bowed his head and shouted at the clones which were rushing in. He thought he was going to die for sure. This is the limit. SCH. Chen Yuan raised his hand and then lowered it. That moment. Kook. The clones rushing towards Chen Yuan knelt on the floor at once. Almost 300 clones. Even if they were supplied with the energy of the core, or a chip in their brains, they were nothing for Chen Yuan. Oh my! H, who opened his tightly closed eyes, was startled. He knew Chen Yuan was a monster, but he never dreamed that he could see this happen. You can't accomplish anything on your own without realization. There was a limit to what a body which only had a theory could handle the technique and chi. The more complex the energy had to be manipulated, the more one had to be enlightenment, and such clones couldn't have that done. The clones were stronger than humanoid weapons. Considering that there weren't so many people in the world who were strong in martial arts, mass-producing such stuff was a danger. Thousands or 10,000s of warriors in supermaster level made like clones could take down a lot of people. Is that why they collected so many cores? Chen Yuan now understood why MS Group was obsessed with cores. And H said, "You must kill all of them." After all, they listened to the one who gave orders to them. There was no reason to spare them. Chen Yuan rolled up his right sleeve and said, "Throwing away such power isn't right." Huh? Cha. The wrist guard on Chen Yuan's wrist disassembled and turned into the Sky Demon sword. As he grabbed it, he slammed it into the ground. Pack. A blue-colored ghost rose from the sword and permeated into the floor. It spread like ice as the floor turned white and faded like frost. And eventually, reached the kneeling clones. Quack. The clones convulsed and soon their bodies turned white. Eventually, ghosts were created from the clones' bodies. No way. Watching that, H was at a loss of words. It was because in front of his eyes were ghosts. But the funny thing was, they are all like Seogi. 50 Seogi clones were now ghosts. The ghost chi and the blood-killing energy were giving out a creepy purple energy. Well, this much should be enough. Chen Yuan was quite satisfied. 250 ghosts and 50 heavenly killing star clones were now acquired. Thud. In front of Chen Yuan, H fell down like a lightning and begged, Please accept me. I'll give all the knowledge I have and the information you want, so please let me serve you." In addition, he gained one of the 10 members of MS Group. Chapter 167. MS Group. Part 4. There was a space with an area measuring about 39 square meters. The walls were decorated with orchids and flower pots, while the middle of the room carried an old-fashioned desk. Sitting at the desk was a man in his early 30s, with his eyes closed. His face, however, was not unfamiliar, as it closely resembled that of Seogi. His closed eyes instilled a feeling of stillness and calmness. Shoo! The man opened his eyes and looked at the entrance. Wing! The automatic door at the front of the room opened and someone entered. It was a woman wearing white research coat and a silver mask with only 2 eyes and the letter C on it. The woman in the mask said to the man who was sitting, "Elder Cho." Was she calling such a younger man an elder? It's difficult getting used to calling you elder, it's really awkward. If that's too hard, just call me Sir Yeshin. At his words and tone, the woman in the mask seemed flustered. He was speaking in a kind voice that masked the obvious fact that he wasn't such a nice human being. He's trying to test me. Elder Cho didn't give his name to just anyone. In fact, even the 10 executives never mentioned his name, but despite this, he still held the position of commander. How could I ever do that? Hoo. In contrast with his youthful appearance, he burst into laughter reminiscent of an old man. The man was indeed Cho Yeshin. Not long ago he looked much closer to his age. His body went through reconstruction, or exuviation, by activating and reversing his aging cells. By comparing his blood samples this time, we'll definitely understand the process. Her eyes were smiling. By studying Elder Cho, they managed to make a lot of progress and actually had a chance to get their desired results this time. All right. What do you have to say after coming here and ending my meditation? She promptly answered his question. I was told to bring the guests from the guest house. Oh, the guests? Yes. Elder Cho stroked his chin, shaking his head in disappointment at his beardless chin. Hoo. I can never get used to this. Elder Cho felt weird that his beard didn't exist anymore and said, "The new non-humans will also come?" Yes. Elder Cho, seemingly interested in that answer, got up from his seat. At that, sea-masked woman immediately guided him into the mechanical corridors reminiscent of a ship's that were equipped with automatic movement devices. After moving along for 10 minutes, a large entrance with a colorful pattern engraved with the word MS suddenly appeared. Wing! The doors opened on both sides. Upon entering was a round table with 5 people waiting. Elder Cho looked at a figure wearing a hood who was sitting at the top, noticing another one in an old European blue robe. It's funny seeing you without your usual flair. Hee. At Elder Cho's words, the person in the hood spoke in a puzzled voice. Human, you look younger. Younger is better. There is a difference in movement. The eyes from the hood seemed sharper. He seems to have gotten stronger. The hooded man's eyes were clearly on alert. These 2 beings had crossed with one another before, and the interaction was so violent that not a sector but an entire area was blown away. Sit down, Elder Cho. C intervened between them, guiding Elder Cho to an empty seat. On top of the round table was a nameplate made of crystal, engraved with the name First Guest. There were 4 such plates numbered until the 4th guest. At that moment, the back screen in the back of the room turned on and someone appeared. Commander. C, who was standing, bowed her head to A, the man on the screen. Seeing A, the middle-aged man in red with sunglasses in front of the crystal plate naming him second guest, said, "Why must I see your face through this screen again, Commander?" Hearing the second guest, A bowed his head and said, "We ask for your understanding for our communication through virtual imaging, but it is because there is a problem." He was apologizing, but with a stiff tone. There was no change in emotion, but everyone seemed fine with the apology. On the other hand, Elder Cho was looking at it questioningly. "What were we called for, human?" The person in the hooded cloak asked with an unwelcome voice. In response, on the screen displaying A, the display changed to show the word demon engraved in red on someone's face. This The attention of Elder Cho went to the man on the screen, Chen Youan, a tall young man with white face and sharp eyes. He was known to them as Chun Musong of the Yongchen group. Demonic cult. The word demon was a mark for those from the Sky Demon Order. In addition to Elder Cho, the man in glasses seemed interested in the man as well. Conversely, the woman wearing two contrasting colors who sat in front of the hooded cloak, sitting undeniably behind the crystal plate saying third guest, remained indifferent. What about him? I answered Elder Cho's question. This person is Chun Musong, the real leader of the current demonic cult, and he is the Chun Ma. Chun Ma. Elder Cho was shocked at the mention of the title. C, too, was puzzled because it was her first time hearing this news. The Chun Ma was born on this land amidst those filthy people? Elder Cho couldn't believe it. The demonic cult was way too weak compared to the past, and he believed that they weren't even worth dealing with. Pick. Then, I changed the large screen to display numerous photos. They were photos taken directly on the location where MS Group and Chen Youan had fought in the past, and among them, one image caught Elder Cho's eyes. Seogi? The old man's expression hardened at the image of Seogi fighting giant monsters. He was fighting a gate entity? Elder Cho was the one who took interest in Seogi for a very long time, raising and teaching him enough to rival against Muram's strongest warriors. However, the range of images showed his defeat. Is that Seogi? In addition, Chen Youan had taken down the worst TRA entity. Red light shone in Elder Cho's eyes. The Sky Demon Sword. He didn't really trust A's words initially, but the moment he saw this sword, he knew he was speaking the truth. He must have killed Seogi. As the red light coming from Elder Cho's eyes flickered, the air around him became noticeably heavy. The aura was dangerous enough to make normal people faint, but the guests didn't falter. Arisha's sword. At that moment, the figure in the hood jumped up. His two eyes, which were indifferent until then, couldn't move from the sword in Chen Youan's hand. What is that sword? The man in the European-style attire, who was behind the hooded figure, was also surprised. The two of them looked at each other. Pick. Numerous images flew in succession, allowing them to keep observing Chen Youan. The last image displayed an analysis of Chen Youan's ability. Chen Musong. Social status, Vice Chairman of Yongchen Group, Demonic Cult. Status, Chun Ma. Level, estimated to be a heavenly master. Weapon, sword seems like his main weapon, but also handles blades. In addition, he's also good at close combat. Abilities, ability to hack and track machines he comes in contact with, and the ability to move through space. Others, can handle thunder chi, fire chi, and ice chi. Although it was a simple analysis, it was a no-brainer that he was a monster. Even Elder Cho couldn't take his eyes off the Heavenly Master level. It was said that only 5 people in the history of Muram were able to climb to that level, and this man was one of them? Heavenly Master level. Are you saying that a monster this powerful was never found before? The red-haired man in sunglasses asked. His shocked eyes told everyone that he knew what this all meant. It was intimidating that one person possessed such dangerous abilities. Why are you showing us this person? In response to the question, A said, this person cannot coexist with our group. Therefore, MS Group has officially declared war with him. War. War carried a huge meaning. Of course, words like kill would have made more sense, but war meant that this man was their strongest opponent thus far. The woman with 2 unique colors opened her lips as she crossed her legs, exposing her thighs. So, the bottom line is that you want us to join this war? Yes. They were the 4 guests. Officially, the 4 guests' name was given to them by MS Group, but they were also called the Untouchables. They weren't in a relationship where the MS Group could order them around. but rather in one based on each other's conditions. If they refused, MS Group would just wage war against Chen Youan and the cult on its own. It doesn't look appealing to me, the woman said as if she wasn't interested. It was the first refusal, and the middle-aged man in red hair shook his head right after. I think you're aware that this exceeds the terms of our agreement. He, too, refused. Coincidentally, the other two others spoke at the same time. I'll take care of that human. Let this old man handle it. Elder Cho and the hooded man sounded their confirmations. The two looked at each other with disgust, leaking their hate for each other. That human possesses an item of our clan. This isn't for you, human. No. If that person is the Chen Ma, I can't yield in this matter. Is that so? Whoa. The round table in the conference room was split in half at the tremendous energy emitted by two different people. As the atmosphere filled with their intent to fight, C tried to intervene as they took charge. He is a person who can use spatial movement, so we can't guess where he is headed. How about the one who finds him first handles him? The two rivals looked at the screen. As I said, the person who found him first would get to handle him. Back in Shanghai. Becky. Enough. At first, the two hugged each other because they were moved by the face they hadn't seen for a long time, but not long after, Becky seemed to have had enough of it and told Hubong to stop. You're being too much. I haven't seen you for so long, don't blame me. Hubong didn't hide his emotions as tears flowed from his eyes while looking at his friend. Ugh, that red-haired guy. TSK. Looking at Hubong, the golden fox clicked her tongue. However, the position where this dangerous fox was on the head of Bai Makian. What? Bai Makian knew about her identity, but he still felt strange. A weird energy manifested in the atmosphere. Move back, everyone. Becky shouted right away to everyone as Hubong, Makian, Yusowa, and I'm so high stepped back. Whoa! The space shook and a person appeared. It wasn't just one person, but actually two people and a ghost. Lord! Hubong and Becky shouted at the same time. The two people were Chen Youan and H, who was wearing a white research coat. Chen Ma. Fat. UK. The fox kicked Bai Makian's arms to jump into the arms of Chen Youan, who took away the fox, rubbing its body on his and put it on his shoulder. The fox proceeded to say that it liked this place as well. Tisk. Chen Youan clicked his tongue, using the sky demon sword to absorb the E's ghost into his wrist guard. He was skeptical at first, but once he became a ghost, Chen Youan now had the ability to move through space and could move other people at Chen Youan's will. What an effective means of transportation. It was his favorite achievement so far. Looking at H, Hubong asked, Lord, who is he? Oh Hyungu, a new researcher in our cult. H's real name was Oh Hyungu. He, too, was a researcher who published his findings in major journals. Since he was abandoned by MS Group, he swore allegiance to Chen Youan and bowed. I am Oh Hyungu, please take good care of me. Becky frowned at the unfamiliar face and just nodded his head. He suddenly got on his knees and apologized to Chen Youan. Lord. It was because I was incompetent that I couldn't carry out the orders given by Lord, so please punish me. Punish? For what? Chen Youan was puzzled when Becky pointed somewhere. There was an object covered with a black cloth, and beneath the cloth was a corpse without arms or a neck. This was the one on the ship. The owner of the body was Chai Muntak. Becky was looking for Ark Young, who suddenly disappeared, and found Chai Muntak on a speedboat. However, Chai Muntak shortly had a seizure right before his head exploded. H, or Oh Hyungu, heard that and thought, I would have turned like that too. H had only survived because his life was saved by Chen Youan. The nano explosions weren't something Becky could prevent, so Chen Youwen told him not to worry. However, even the executives could be removed by this easily and thoughtlessly. Chen Youwen figured that there must be more secrets beyond what he knew so far. Annoying. However, my lord, Hu Bong, who joined them later, was curious about what happened to Becky. Because he was acting weird. When Hu Bong asked, Becky told him not to worry, so he just waited first, but he couldn't wait any longer. What happened? Lord Chen Ma, look at this. Bai Mak Hian suddenly intervened. What? At Chen Youwen's confusion, Bai Mak Hian showed him his phone screen. An unexpected message was written on the screen along the word, emergency. Raid by Blade 6.